All right, let's talk about the whole Rooney thing. They proposed this crazy thing that they obviously voted down, which made no sense to begin with. I don't know how. Let me ask you this: did that get close to being voted through, or was it dead in arrival?
They didn't even vote on it.
Oh, okay.
And I honestly, I generally they won't put these things in the docket unless they think they're going to fly. And you know how this works, unless they think it's going to be ratified. And I think the reason why this was maybe a little bit different is I think they wanted to take the temperature of the room and see how this was accepted, because I think that those involved knew it was a radical idea. And so, you get it out there a few days before you actually schedule the vote on it, and it allows you to take the temperature of the room. And, the reaction I got over the weekend from coaches and from scouts, who would have been affected by this, quite frankly, some of them thought it was insulting.
I thought it was. I thought it was not only insulting; I thought it was ridiculous. I thought it was absolutely ridiculous. I mean, it was actually changing. I mean, it was an embarrassing notion. I don't even know who came up with it, but I couldn't even believe the commissioner endorsed it. It was ridiculous.
Yeah, and so I think that they felt like they needed to do something radical. They came up with this, and again, a lot of the people I talked to thought it was insulting. Other people, there were some that appreciated the thought, but just felt like it was the wrong way to go about it. All the way around, the sense I got, in both the coaching and the scouting community was that this was not a great idea.
No, it was ridiculous. It was. You don't want to get into competitive balance in any way. Anything that affects competitive balance, you don't want to get into the other stuff with.
Yeah, and so I think that. The other part of it is good. The other part that prevents teams from blocking upward mobility. A lot of young coaches and a lot of young scouts, and there will be some unintended consequences to that too. But there was a strong feeling that was overdue. That sort of change needed to come. But as far as the rule incentivizing diversity hires, I felt like a lot of these guys felt like that didn't directly address any problem.
It's funny. They went to that thing a couple of years ago where they started creating fake titles to keep guys. Assistant head coach, assistant this and that, blah, blah, and creating them. And they said no more, just three, either you're a head coach or you're a assistant and that's it. That didn't make a lot of sense either. You want to give guys a chance to move up. Coordinator is a move up, and it is a step towards being a head coach. Most guys will be coordinators 9 times out of 10 before they're head coaches. Yeah. So from that standpoint, that is an upwardly mobile move. So that move, I think, makes sense. I do think, though, the people who don't like tokenism are going to get more tokenism, because when you know the jobs that are a lock, there's someone that they especially want. They want the guy, and then they go out and interview now 2 people while it's a sham when they're hiring somebody to begin with. It'll even get a little sillier there, and it will even circulate the same faces more. But if they think it will put more people in the mix, I'm not even against that.
No, I'm fine with that. And I actually think there's a common sense approach that they should try to apply to this. I mean, there are certain, and listen, there are not every coaching search is the same, right?
Right.
There are certain coaching searches where it's almost like a recruit.
Right. There's not any search. They know who they're hiring. That's all there is to it. Yeah.
That's like the Raiders, a couple of years ago. They wouldn't have even fired Del Rio if they didn't know they were getting Gruden, right? So that was Gruden all the way. And just to bring somebody in, I don't know if there's anybody in there. You know what I mean? To just put them through the paces like that. So I sort of wish there was a way to separate, and maybe what it is, Mike, is you say, okay, you've got a week to hire this guy. If you don't hire him, then you got to go through a normal process. Maybe there's something like that they could do, where when it's a targeted search like that, they could separate those from the other ones. I do think that it helps to put more guys through the process and get guys in front of owners and get people sort of in the pipeline. I think all of that makes sense, and I don't have a huge issue with that. I think the idea of incentivizing hires that way, it was sort of forced, awkward, whatever word you want to put on it. That's what it was. And so I think, the effort was there from the owners. It's just, don't do think, quite know how to go about it. Obviously, after the reaction they got over the weekend, I think that they, got the strong sense that this is something they had to sort of slam on the brakes with.
We're talking about Breer, NFL. Let me ask it this way, because you talk to more assistant coaches than I do now at this stage, and this would be the fairest answer. Because I think there was institutional racism in the NFL, but I don't think there is anymore. I don't think anybody does it because they don't believe in promoting people. I think it's a question of, are there candidates worth promoting or candidates that look worth promoting? The question I would ask is, do you think that black assistants that you talk to, do you think they feel they are unfairly blocked?
I think what they feel like, and this is the general sense, and again, I asked all the questions this weekend of a bunch of guys I know, and I would tell you, I don't think they think it's a conscious thing, but I do think that they feel like, and I had Mark Ross, who I'm sure you know from all his years in the Giants, on my podcast the other day, and we talked about it. He said the same thing like a handful of other guys said, which was, he went through 12 of these interviews for GM spots, and what it kept coming back was, well, we felt more comfortable with the other guy, and that was sort of a common refrain. And so, the sense I got from these guys was like that the owners had a better comfort level with people who had similar backgrounds to them, which, may be a natural thing, and it's not conscious racism, but that was a consistent thing that I heard across the board from different guys. And so one of the things that I think would be a good idea is find a way to get the rising young assistants, the rising young scouts in front of owners on a more consistent basis, so they get to build relationships with these guys. So when these guys have openings, they do feel comfortable with them. I think that would make sense for everybody. If, and I'm not just talking about minority candidates, I'm talking about everybody. If there's a way to do it where, whether it's inviting.
You could put together a seminar every year where all the assistants and the owners mingle for a week somewhere. You know what I mean? Right. Where they all go meet up and they meet and they break up into groups and they talk.
And you know what? And you could bring owners to the combine where all the coaches and scouts are. Right? You could bring some of the coaches and scouts to the owners meeting where generally it's just the GM. It
actually makes some sense. It does, because they get to know the guys rather than not know them. I think there's something to that. I also think the only thing that I do think there is a little institutional racism in is the guys. The fastest route to being a head coach is through the passing game, and the passing game still is very white. The guys who run the passing game are mostly white.
Yeah, and I think that's definitely a problem, and that, and look, part of it is, and you can look in these guys' backgrounds. A lot of those guys, when they were growing up, and, most of them didn't play at the NFL level, but a lot of them were quarterbacks, right? And if you look at, and we can go deep here, Mike, quarterback has become a country club position. They're brought up like golfers or tennis players now, with personal coaches, with training from the time they're very young.
Sure.
They're brought up that way. It's become a country club position in what's typically been across the board a very blue collar sport. So, I do think that there's definitely that factors in play, because naturally the quarterback is going to be the guy who's probably going to be most equipped to go into a career in coaching, and most certainly some of the guys most equipped to coach in the passing game on the offensive side of the ball. And if there's a huge number of those guys becoming head coaches because of the way the game is, then it makes sense that, there'd be the guys from that background that would wind up benefiting from that. So that certainly exists. There's no question about that. That one's probably a little harder to fix. That said, Mike, if you want to look at the pattern of success over the years, Pete Carroll, John Harbaugh, Bill Belichick, Dan Quinn, Ron Rivera. How many coaches that aren't offensive coaches that brought teams to the Super Bowl over the last decade? It's more than offensive coaches, So there's I don't know if there's great proof out there that the best head coaches are necessarily these guys who have background coaching quarterbacks.
No, I don't think they are. I don't think
Yeah.
they're any more successful. I just think it's the faster way now because it
the
sells
trend,
tickets, right? Because everyone wants to work on developing the quarterback position. Right. But you know what? I also think the NFL needs to find a way to transition some of their black players who are in the league for a long time into coaching, and a lot of them who have made money, they don't want to put in the work. They don't want to put in the 80 hours. You know how coaching is on the early years. You got to put 1,000,000 hours in. It's a thankless job, and you have to pay your dues. You're not going to get a job. You know, in the NBA, you can go from being a player to a coach. You can't do that in the NFL. It's not going to happen.
I'll give you two fantastic examples. One, Gerard Mayo, who I think everybody knew. Everybody who's been around him for 5 minutes would be able to tell from the time he was in his early 20s, the guy could coach if he wanted to. Bill Belichick put the green dot on his helmet his second year in the league. And he came into the league at 21 years old. So, everybody could have told you that Gerard Mayo would have been a fantastic coach. Well, he retires a little early after 7 years in the NFL, and he goes into finance for 5 years, right?
Yep.
Well, he goes into coaching. His first year in coaching, he's signaling plays in. He's not immediately he's rising through the ranks really quickly, and that guy's going to be a head coach within 5 years. It's why wasn't he identified early? And
absolutely. Absolutely. When you have that guy, absolutely, that player, because it is an easier transition, but for the white player. But the other thing is that you're going to pay your dues because, you're not going to step in. Larry Bird stepped in and becomes a head coach. In baseball, a guy who's a star can step in and quickly become a manager. In the NFL, it doesn't work that way. You can't. You're not qualified. You're just not. You've got to put in some time before you do it.
If you show you can do it, though, you can rise quickly. Like Mike Vrabel, Jack Del Rio. There are examples of that.
Oh, listen, I think you can do it within a period of years, and you can move quickly if you're a guy who's been in the league a lot of years. I think you can, absolutely. But I think it's still got to put in at least a couple of years before you're going to become a head coach.
No question. And I think, and you see it on the GM side, too. I mean, that there are enough guys that want to do it. Like one guy that I would certainly point out that I don't think a lot of people, realize could do it. Andrew Hawkins, who played a bunch of years for the Bengals, is a really good receiver for 6-7 years. His older brother played in the NFL. While he was playing in the NFL, he got a graduate degree from Columbia, and he told me a few times, I want to be an NFL general manager. He's on TV now. Why isn't somebody hired him? You know what I mean? The guy's got a graduate degree from Columbia. He wants to be a GM. He played in the league for a bunch of years. Why hasn't somebody hired him? There are examples like that where you look at it and you say, the NFL's got to do a good job of identifying guys who want to be GMs, who want to be head coaches, who are still playing, and fostering that. And, they're going to get some no's. You and I both know, and you and I have both been around players who want no part of coaching. Right?
Absolutely. A lot of them.
Right. But you're going to find a few. If you put out enough lines, and there are enough players out there, and you know this as well as I do, you put out enough lines, there are going to be a couple of guys there that are really good that are going to say, yeah, I'm going to give that a shot.
A perfect example. Leftwich is going to be a head coach. There's no question. Yep. I mean, he's going to. Now he's working with Tom Brady. He's going to be a head coach. There's no. I mean, there's no question he's going to be a head coach.
Yep. And he's a great example of it. A guy who played in the league and who, he's the eighth pick in the draft, so he didn't live up to his billing as a player.
And he's 39 years old now, and he's going to be a head coach.
Yeah, but he got with Bruce Arians and as a backup quarterback impressed Bruce Arians in Pittsburgh, and then Arians is in Arizona. Arians winds up hiring him. Arians becomes a great advocate for him, and now he's Tom Brady's offensive coordinator. And like you said, he's in the same situation that Mike McCoy and Adam Gase were in Denver when they were coaching Peyton Manning, where if the quarterback's really good, that people are going to get hired away from there and are going to benefit from it. And the first guy on the list is going to be the offensive coordinator.
No question. And you know what? I think it's not like an owner saying, hey, like you're watching the Express movie where, the Redskins are saying we're trading away any black player we get our hands on, okay? Were there days like that? Yes. Did the Red Sox act that way and the Washington Redskins act that way? Yes, they did. But that's a long time ago. I think now there's none of that, but what there is there needs to be more minority candidates. If there's more minority candidates, there'll be more head coaches.
And that's been sort of my feeling on it all along. I think back to the concussion issue, right? And they tried to change the rules at the top level of the game. And I remember asking guys in the league office about that. They were like, well, if we change the rules up here, it'll filter down and everybody will catch on. And what they missed was, no, like the guys that you're getting are finished products. Like, so a guy's not going to change the way he plays when he arrives in the NFL, when the margin for error is almost nothing. And, it was something like that they eventually had to realize we need to attack this at the grassroots. It's not something that you take care of at the very end point, And that's what I think the flaw was. And that's been the flaw in a lot of things they've done from the diversity standpoint. Is they're still focused on that end point. They're not worried as much about the pipeline. And the pipeline, to me, is the most important part. You get the right people in the pipeline. You get them well trained. You get them with good people, and you're going to get results that way. It's the most obvious way to do it, Mike. And it takes more work, and it takes more money, and it takes more commitment, and all that different stuff. And I know it's harder to do it that way than it is to simply write a rule. But if you do it that way, you can get real results.
All right, we're talking about. I had to read this story twice before I actually knew it was real. An unnamed NFL player is suing United Airlines, alleging he was sexually harassed, assaulted, and violated by a female passenger on a flight from L.A. to Newark. An NFL player is going to sue United Airlines because he was violated by a female passenger? An NFL player?
Yeah, that was a wild story, and I wish I had something to play on it. I would think that things.
This isn't from the Onion. This story. This isn't from the Onion.
Yeah, I would think that things would have to get pretty nuts, right? Things have to get really out of control for it to go down that way. I thought it was crazy too.
I mean, the guy's going to be. I don't know who the player is, but you know what? He's gonna hear from a lot of NFL players next year if it's.
Well, if they find out who he is,
absolutely.
And I guarantee you, there are some guys trying to figure out whether or not that guy's on their team.
Yeah, I mean, the young lady, what was the size differential? He's an NFL player.
Yeah, it was I'd love to hear some more detail on how all that went down because it seems pretty out of control.
I mean, there are actually graphic details here, that are almost like, all right, I guess we could say that, but this is an NFL football player alleging that a young lady did this to him on a plane. Yeah. I mean, it should
be able to it should be able to, I don't know. I mean, I feel like in that situation, you just kind of let it go and laugh about it later. But now, I don't know. Different people have different takes on these sorts of things.
All right. Tomlin made the point last week. We're talking about with Breer that no camp should open until everybody's camp can open. All right. It's got to be even, everything. And that is very difficult to do with cities and states and municipalities all in different levels of opening and closing. And, I know everything is opening now quietly, but there's still, it's not every city's in the same place, obviously. Governor Cuomo said he would work hard with the Jets and Giants to make sure they opened, and the Bills too. He even said he declared himself a Bills fan, which I didn't even know he was till the other day when he declared himself a Bills fan. I've known the guy 25 years, I think. I didn't even know he was a Bills fan, to be honest with you. But not that it matters. But the point is, do you think we're close to doing this?
I honestly think they probably wait until the start of training camp. And the main reason why is because they don't really have to do anything right now. And I think you'd be kicking a hornet's nest if you start it now. I mean, there are certain states where all you got to do is look at the timeline, and New Jersey's one of them, Massachusetts is one of them, Washington State's one of them, Maryland's one of them, California is certainly one of them, where you can see like the timeline, the reopening timeline. There's no way that before the end of June these teams are going to be able to reopen their facilities for everybody. The limits on gatherings are just going to be too small, and so what I could see happening is maybe in June what they could do is they could say, okay, players can go in and work out, go get a lift in for 1 week in these places, so they can sort of test the protocol and everything else, so everybody's not just kind of flying blind when you get to July. But I don't think that we see anything until this sort of because the NFL doesn't have to do anything right now. We're not at really a critical juncture in the calendar for them. Once we get to training camp, we're talking about something else. And I think that's when the NFL really has to confront the issue, where the doctrine has been until all facilities can open, no facilities can open. So, I think for right now, you sit tight and you take advantage of the flexibility that you have in the calendar and the fact that this isn't a critical point for football. You watch what happens in the other leagues. You watch what goes right, what goes wrong, and then you confront it when you have to confront it. And if we get to July and some of these places still aren't allowing teams to open, then you're going to have to make a decision on either A, moving some training camps out of state, or B, pushing the season back a little bit. So I don't think they got to confront it until July, so I don't think they will fully confront it until July.
NFL had a tough weekend last week. They had the Baker thing, which now we don't know what's right and what's wrong. You had the Baker Dunbar, you had the Latimer, and you had the Ed Oliver, and all of them had guns involved, or at least the hint of guns involved, or the alleging guns being involved. So not a great weekend for the NFL.
No, and I think it's sort of like I sort of think it's like they had the DWI issue a few years ago. I think like there were, and I can't remember how many of them there were, but there were a bunch of players that were involved in that. You had the two Broncos executives who got busted, and if you remember, and this was I think 5, 6, 7 years ago, after that one really bad summer, they started to strengthen all the rules on DWI and kind of create a no-tolerance policy when it came to that, and they got real results. And so I think when you see these patterns of guys getting arrested, you really have to look at things that tie the arrest together. And the truth is the NFL's like arrest issue, like their issue, with players running afoul of the law, has gotten better over the last few years. And some of the measures they put in have helped. But, there is something that ties all of these together. And the fact that there were guns involved in every one of these cases, A, is problematic, and B, I don't think it surprises anybody either. It's not like this is way out of bounds for NFL players. And so I certainly think that, if you look at the arrests that happened over the course of the last week, the one thing the NFL can do here is maybe address what's become a gun problem in the league.
Do you feel the NFL, do they want to independently investigate these things themselves? Do they want the league to investigate these, or they want to let the authorities run their course with these things?
They've moved a little further away from conducting an investigation. I know that there's some owners, Jerry Jones is the top of the list here, that want them out of the investigation together, and to think that it's silly that an organization without subpoena power is really conducting these sorts of investigations. That it's a no-win situation for the NFL. So I think at the very least they're going to look into them, of course, and they're going to work with the authorities. But I think at the very least, they'll try to let the authorities handle them. And, if there are still lingering questions after all of that is done, then they sort of try to tie up any loose ends with their investigators as they can. I do think the one thing we have to remember here, too, the way the NFL's conduct policy is written, the commissioner does have fairly broad authority where if you bad light, and that's a pretty, that gives you a lot of leeway. If you put the league in a bad light in any way, then you can be punished for it. And so certainly in cases like this, I think that even if these guys get off, there's still kind of a gray area there where there could be some sort of league sanction because the league looks at it and said you put yourself in a bad situation, and that was going to necessarily put the league in a bad light.
All right, the last one is one of the league's big stars, and that's obviously Aaron Rodgers, who admitted he was taken aback by what they did on draft night. Admitted he not only didn't expect him to take a quarterback early, he did not ever think they would trade up to take a quarterback. Admitted he was stunned. Admitted now that it may change his thought process where it had been that he would finish his career as a Packer. Now he's not sure that that's the case. It's interesting. I'll bring it to the old Mantle DiMaggio. When Casey Stengel was really rough with DiMaggio, they didn't get along, so he used Mantle as a wedge when Mantle was breaking in because he had such immense talent and to tweak DiMaggio. So DiMaggio was not nice to Mantle. Mantle never forgot that and was always great to rookies, and it was unbelievably acclaimed for being great to his teammates and great to rookies because he did not like what DiMaggio did to him. Aaron Rodgers felt the wrath of Brett Favre. He made it very clear he didn't like what Brett Favre did. Now he's in the same boat where he's being put in the exact same place. Do you think he responds the way Mantle did, where he does an about-face and is actually nice to the young player, or does he go the way Favre did?
So that's what I think was so interesting about his response. If you read closely what he said, you can see there's a very clear line where there's anger, but the anger is not towards Jordan Love. So go back and read his comments, and you can see very clearly it's not this kid's fault. I'm going to help this kid. But he was honest, too, in saying, it took me aback. I was surprised by it. And part of that's on the Packers, too. I mean, to not call him and tell him this could happen, and he had to find out on draft
See,
night.
I admit I would be slighted because I think the organization owes me more than that, and
right.
Any great quarterback. Hey, listen, we all know that it ruined Dan Reeves and John Elway's relationship when he drafted Tommy Maddox. It ruined them. It ruined their relationship.
And to me, it's even if you think there's a slight possibility you're taking one in the first round, pick up the phone and call him and just say, listen, we don't know if this is going to, come. We don't know if it's going to play out this way. We just want to tell you it's on our radar. So if it happens, don't be shocked. And we're calling you out of respect. And it's to me, if you do that, the whole thing takes on a different context, I feel like we could have done that for him. That they didn't, that's water under the bridge now. We'll see.
It might be intentional, though, because, years ago, you remember, I mean, you might not, but I think you probably do, when the Yankees basically told Derek Jeter, you know what, you want a bigger deal, go out and look for it yourself. And Jeter was furious about that, absolutely furious. And he had a right to be because he's like, wait a second, I deserve better than that, okay? I think sometimes these young guys, this guy comes in the league, LaFleur, he and the hierarchy of the Packers go 13-3, and they're feeling their oats, and now all of a sudden we're the reason. The quarterback's not the reason anymore. We had to basically walk around on eggshells the first year. Now, you know what? We're on equal ground. Maybe that's the message that he's trying to send.
Well, and the interesting part about it is the Packers could benefit. If you talk to anybody who is around the Patriots, 14, 15, 16, I think if they were honest about it, they would tell you to a man that the drafting of Jimmy Garoppolo and what Bill Belichick said on the weekend of that draft, where he said that part of what motivated them to draft Garoppolo was Brady's age and his contract situation. That lit a fire under Brady.
No, and Brady got him traded.
And I'm not saying that this is the only reason why, but if you look at it, Brady wins his first three Super Bowls, 01, 03, 04. They went 10 years without winning one. When did they win their next one? They won their next one during Garoppolo's rookie year. And that set off 4 trips to the Super Bowl in 5 years and 3 championships. And so, I think as much as it does can work to piss the starting quarterback off, sometimes that can be a good thing. And I think like in New England, they would tell you that lighting that fire under Brady, like actually really worked out for them. And yeah, it made things uncomfortable. And yeah, like it was awkward at times and things got a little toxic at times in that building, but the end result you can't argue with. And so, I'll tell you this, like I would fully expect that you'll get a very motivated Aaron Rodgers coming back in 2020. And my guess is a big part of that is going to be to prove I'm still the best quarterback here. It's not close, and I'm going to make you realize it. And the team winds up benefiting from that.
Here's the player in the league that I think I would have the hardest time knowing what level of play he's going to be at this year. And you know who it is? Roethlisberger. I've always liked Roethlisberger. He's always been a highly productive player, but he's always been a guy who's had his bad days too. I mean, some really bad days. And a lot of great days. And he's had, I think, a Hall of Fame career. But how much is left now with all his baggage and all his injuries and everything? How good is Roethlisberger still? I think that, to me, is one of the fascinating questions of the year, is how good Roethlisberger still is.
No question. And I think what's really interesting about it is, a few years ago when they were really loaded on offense, when he was throwing to Antonio Brown and Juju Smith-Schuster, and he had Le'Veon Bell behind him, and they had the best offensive line in football, they really sort of needed him to be really good, and they needed the offense to be really good because the defense had been in like perpetual rebuild for 7 or 8 years. The team he's coming back to now, like, not only is better equipped to sort of support him a little bit more, it also proved last year it could win without him. I mean, they went 8-8 with very, very mediocre quarterback play. And so, having gone through that, now he's stepping back into a situation where he's suddenly got a running game that's representative. He's got a defense that can win games. They've added stud defensive players. Like, you look at it now in defense, this is probably as good as they've been since those Super Bowl years.
Yep.
And having like T.J. Watt and Minka Fitzpatrick and Devin Bush. I mean, it's a very good defense. So, I think you could argue, even if Roethlisberger is not quite as good as he was 3 or 4 years ago, he doesn't really need to be. The Steelers don't need to ask him to be because the defense is better than it has been, and the running game had to perform last year under very adverse conditions. And so, again, like I think Roethlisberger is walking back into a very, very good situation, even if the skill position talent around him isn't what it once was.
Do you think he thinks this is it for him? Is this the last rodeo for Roethlisberger?
Well, he's promised to them that he would play 2 more. I'm trying to think of it now because he did the contract last year. So he promised them last year that he would play 3 more years. So he's got 2 more years left on that promise. And so he gave them his pledge on that. And I think that's part of the reason why they didn't get more aggressive in trying to find other answers at quarterback this year, because they felt comfortable that they would have him for 2021. So, yeah, I mean, I think his intention is to play the next 2 years, and then we'll see from there.
And you have the best quarterback coming out. You can fill in the blank this year from, I mean, if you loved Luck, he's going to have a Luck grade. He's going to have an Elway grade. He's going to have an Aikman grade. He's going to have a can't-miss Hall of Fame grade.
Right.
So people are going to be looking to get in position for this guy because he's got – I mean, this guy's from Central Casting, let's be honest. He's got everything.
He's real.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've had the word perfect.
Yeah, he's got everything. I mean, listen, he's probably – this might be the best – because Luck was not as highly rated as Elway, and either was Peyton Manning. Elway was the highest rated ever, and this guy might be there because he's got everything. So, Manning, some people didn't love because he didn't have a great arm. Luck, for whatever reason, they thought he was a little different or whatever it was, despite how smart he was and everything. And he turned out to be a great player. Too bad he's not around. But this guy might be the best graded quarterback since John Elway, which is saying a lot. Right.
And, I mean, he's definitely like, and having done this now, covered the league for 15 years, like I've talked to teams every year about quarterbacks coming out. There are certain guys they talk
there's
about
a Hall of Fame grade. He gets his grade that only a couple of guys get. That LT got, he got, that Elway got, that Lawrence Taylor got. Guys like that, who very few times do they throw around those grades.
Luck was discussed in a way in 2011 and 2012. Luck was discussed in a way that no other quarterback has been discussed in the 15 years I've been covering the league. And this guy is being discussed that way privately by NFL teams. And so the problem, Mike, is you're going to have to be the worst team in the league.
Right. Oh, he's going first. There's no question. Yes.
Not only that, but whoever gets that pick isn't trading it. So
no chance.
You can build up all the capital. You can build up all the capital you want. Whoever gets that pick is not trading it. So.
And that's why I think a team like Carolina might build a team on one side of the ball this year, take their lumps, and be ready in a year. You know?
Yeah, I mean, there's it's. I'll tell you this, Mike. It promises to get awfully interesting in December when we find out who the worst teams are. There could be some creative. There could be some creative roster management.
There definitely will. There will be some edicts from the commissioner about what's going on because you can turn around in a hurry with this draft. That's for sure.
Yeah, no question about it.
Listen, thanks. We'll talk soon. Thank you, Albert, very much.
Awesome. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, Albert. Breer back after.